Hey guys, welcome back to the Boston Chris Show. And if you're new, I would love to earn your subscription or follow with this brand new episode of the show featuring John Arthur Martinez, throwback Texas troubadour, right here on the show for the very first time. Man, today we got into it with John for about so many things. You know, where he grew up, which, by the way, was Austin. Being a second generation musician, how divorce kind of catapulted his love for music and how that happened as a young kid. How he balanced sports, education, music, all of those things, and how he ended up into the music business eventually after an incredible collegiate education. How he ended up on Nashville Star and kind of the transition and evolution of his time on that show, and how he has become such an original artist over time, and the strategy for having really unique, not only original songs, but also turning cover songs into almost original songs themselves. Man, what a great conversation this was with Jam. And I hope you guys will check it out. Make sure you're liking this episode. Hit that like button. If you want to see more like this, of course, you can hit the subscribe or follow button. And comment down below where you're watching or tuning in from today. But without further ado, guys, let's get into it with the one and only Jam, John Arthur Martinez.
It's time to jam. It's time to mingle. It's time to see what everyone's drinking. It's time to jam. It's time to mingle. It's time to see what everyone's drinking. Until we all lose connection.
Hey y'all, this is Pauline Reese. Thanks for tuning in to the Boston Chris Show.
Guys, it is John Arthur Martinez week here on the podcast, and man, I've been a fan of John since the late 90s, and man, I'm so excited to have you here, John. I appreciate you doing this.
I'm happy to do this, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So the first song I would love to include and get the story behind is "The Phone Call." It's one of my favorite songs of yours, and can you kind of tell us how the song came to be?
That song has become one of the fan favorites very quickly since I released that on the album Three White Spanish Horses.
Right.
The album was born out of all of the songs that I was writing during the COVID lockdown. And in Texas, of course, it was more short-lived than in other states. But nonetheless, even whenever the restrictions were removed, there were a lot of venues who were being very cautious and they weren't reopening. And so I had a lot of downtime. I had a lot of nights when I stayed at home. And a friend of mine suggested that I write a song about someone who always calls at the right time. Someone, a friend that seems to sense when they need, when a friend that senses when you need a friend. And so that actually was occurred. It was a true story that I turned into the song. I had a good friend named John Spar, and John called because he was worried that he knew I didn't have any gigs. And we started talking, and we must have talked for, I'm not going to say 2 hours, but I'll bet you it was at least 90 minutes. We talked and talked. And I wove that conversation into the song about those shows that he and I had seen when I was a young man. I was much younger than him. I shouldn't say much younger. I was a few years younger than him. I was still in high school when he would come home from college. He was going to Western Maryland College in Westminster, Maryland. And because he was in college, he knew a lot of the cooler artists that I was not yet aware of. And he said, there's a guy named Commander Cody performing at the Armadillo World Headquarters in Austin, Texas, for example. He said, we need to go. And I said, well, let's go. And so we went, and there was one show after another that we saw at this iconic place that everybody shortening, just called the Armadillo. And there were other shows that we saw at various places, like the Broken Spoke. The Broken Spoke is a landmark dance hall in Austin, Texas. So we saw shows there, and there was especially one major event that he said, we definitely need to go to. I've got tickets to go to Willie Nelson's picnic
Wow.
on 4th of July. So I remember us hauling 3 ice chests. This was back when you could bring an ice chest into a music festival. And our idea was, because the tickets were kind of expensive, we were going to get our money back by selling Coors
Yeah.
to all of the folks that were up close to the stage. We went really early, and it was a long way back to go to where you could get a cold beer. But unfortunately, we consumed most of our profits. Or John, being the kind and generous spirit that he is, he wound up just giving them away to folks that were all around us. So, but I remember, because we started early in the morning, there was a period where we fell asleep in the afternoon during one of the set changes, and when we, I remember when I woke up from that nap, Willie was on the stage with Slim and Slim Pickens and all of the folks from that movie Honeysuckle Rose. That was the movie. And I remember Asleep at the Wheel was on the stage also with Willie Nelson. And I remember the fireworks went off above the stage because it was 4th of July. And I remember being so moved by all of that. And so anyway, that event and many of the other events that he and I shared were woven into that song, including the night that he and I and my friend Amanda, who he was dating, when we were driving back from Austin, and my gas gauge was broken, and we didn't realize I was out of gas. We had to sleep on one very cold, late January, early February night out. We had to sleep in my car until we could find a gas station that was open, because back in those days, there weren't any gas stations open. And so all of that's woven into the song. So it's based on a true story, including the part where I had to get his father and bail him out of jail on a New Year's Eve night.
I love that the song kind of took shape over a lot of years, and I mean, this is one of your more recent songs that you released in 21, I think that record came out, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
I love how stories from decades ago can still make it into your stories, into your songs, and I'm really excited to show people this song. It's a live version of John Arthur Martinez doing my favorite song, The Phone Call. Y'all check it out.
You freed me from the falling rain when you called me this early Monday morning. You heard the winds, felt my pain. Instinctively you knew I was alone. You brought a pair of shenanigans. We reminisced until the sun was shining. About the crazy things we did for grins. You kept me talking on the phone. You freed me from a faithless night as you recalled my early stabs at poetry. Inspired by the Pedernales High at Willie's show outside of town. The broken gasoline gauge, the cold night with Amanda in my Chevy. The day the Allman Brothers took the stage with Jerry Jeff at Maynard Downs. my soul with laughter as you recalled that night in Nolanville, and that awkward ride with your dad so we could post your bail on New Year's Day. The top turned to the early wheel, rusty weir, the spoke and armadillo. The songs we shared, how music heals, how it's all part of every show I play. How do you know when to call? How do you know I'm in free fall? You freed me with your faithful words. You listened when I chose to speak more fearlessly. You lifted me with lyrics I first learned on the old guitar you gave me. Christopherson still speaks the truth. I still play so many of those melodies. So last night when I felt the blues, your phone call on a stormy Monday saved me. Last night when I felt the blues, your phone call on a stormy Monday, well, it saved me.
So we are back with Jam, John Arthur Martinez here on the show for the first time. This show's very biographical, so we're going to start real early. You kind of grew up, born and raised in Austin, right?
Yes, I was born in Austin and raised in the hill country community west of Austin, on a ranch called, in a town called Round Mountain, Texas. And then when I moved into, I guess from 4th to 5th grade is when I moved to Marble Falls, which is where I spent most of my life.
And one of the things I read about you is that your folks got divorced at a real young age for you. Was that kind of a catalyst for you getting into music and starting to love music? Was that kind of an escape from reality for you, or?
That definitely had an effect on me. My dad was a drummer, and he wasn't a full-time drummer. He always had to have a day gig after he got out of the military. He was in the Army and he was in the Marines, and he never spoke about either of those experiences to me. He was more focused on music, and I remember him taking me to see a band called Sonny and the Sunliners, who was playing like a block party only a few blocks away from his house in South Austin. And later I learned that he had also performed with one of the most iconic groups in Austin, Texas, Alfonso Ramos and his little brother Ruben Ramos. And they were part of what was known as the Tejano sound. And they were the creators of the Tejano sound with a few other acts, and including Little Joe and Y La Familia. And so, yes, my father was a big influence on my music, and the fact that when I went to see him, that was part of that experience. It made it seem even more special.
As far as your dad being a musician as well, was this was more of an allure for you? It drew you into music rather than being something that maybe you want to rebel against, right?
That's true, because my stepfather and my mom, they probably thought they were doing me a favor by steering me away from music. And, like when I wanted to play drums in the band, they weren't keen on that idea. And I wound up focusing on sports instead. I wound up playing high school tennis competitively, and I ran track competitively. I was a varsity regional athlete, and I was a state semifinalist in tennis. And it was the tennis abilities that led to my college career because I was offered scholarships at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor, a private school north of Austin, south of Waco.
So you basically had like, man, two separate families. You had one family that wants you to focus on education and essentially the get your real job get a real job mentality. But whenever you're around your dad, you're really mesmerized by this idea of music, right? Like that is that your world at that time as a youngster?
That that's it concisely, because every time I visited my dad, there was also these experiences where my dad and my aunt Belle and my uncle Herbert would get on the porch and sing harmonies to my grandmother. And of course, my dad, even when the others weren't present, was always singing a song in the kitchen to my grandmother. And so, yes, those were definitely uh, alluring to me.
Do you feel like you
Those
had to
moments.
kind of almost concede for one of the other? Like, I'm going to do the music to concede for my dad. I'm going to do the education to concede for my mom. Do you feel like looking back that was something that you had to deal with?
Well, I should also state that my dad's oldest brother was a big influence, and uh, he was a tenured professor at the University of California, Riverside, and he wrote books and he wrote comparative literature, and he was also an artist, and so that was part of, so. It, he always encouraged my education as well. So I think they were both sides encouraging my education. But definitely, growing up with my mom and my stepfather, the high school sports and extracurricular activities were the focus rather than music.
Yeah.
Although I will say that listening to the radio, in we had one radio in the house when we lived out in the country, and I remember tuning that into some of her favorite stations. One of them a rock and roll station out of San Antonio, and one of them a country station out of Austin. And so I was glued to that radio a lot of times.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because like you're just a fantastic artist in a genre sense. You have a lot of edge to your stuff. But for me personally, as a fan of yours, one of the things I really attribute to your name is really Texas Western music. That sound, right? Like kind of a throwback to that. You talk about kind of having Tejano influences as a kid and stuff like that. Where is that Western influence coming from for you?
Well, my mom's favorite is a guy named Hank Williams,
Sure.
and if you try to emulate his songwriting, you're going to become a decent songwriter. He had a way of marrying the melody with the lyric, and he would do it in perfect rhymes in his day. Nowadays, there's a little bit more leeway where you can have approximate rhymes and you can have vowel rhymes, but Hank's songs, they were perfectly married to the lyric. Like, well, let me give you an example. Like, um, I tried so hard, my dear, to show that you're my every dream. Yet you're afraid each thing I do is just an evil scheme. And they fit perfectly together. And the rhymes are perfect. And so that if so whenever I got involved with the Austin Songwriters Group, um, people saw that I was one of the advanced writers, not because I had written so many more songs, but I think my songs were more like Hank's. They made sense more. They fit together. And of course, my degree's in English, and I wound up with a degree in English and a minor in speech, and a degree in journalism and a minor in philosophy. I had kind of double major, double minor, just because I wound up taking so many courses
Yeah.
over the course of my collegiate education. And so when I was writing songs all through that time period, but poetry, I was writing that since I was in fourth grade.
When did you first pick up an instrument?
I started playing a cheap guitar I got from, I think it was the Montgomery Ward's catalog, and it had a little. This must have been when I was in high school, maybe must have been 14 or 15 years old. And this was a weak introduction to being a musician because it had one little recording of Down in the Valley, and it had instructions on how to play three chords. And so I think it started there, but truly it started in college. I had an uncle on my mom's side. My uncle who married my mom's younger sister gave me a good chunk of money when I graduated from high school. And he said, I want you to spend this on something you don't need. He said, I don't want to find out that this went to tuition or this went to books you needed for your classes. He said, or gas for your car. I want you to spend it on something you don't need. And so I bought a decent guitar, a Ventura guitar. It was made in Japan, but it played in perfect tune. And I kept that at my bed my freshman year of college. And I bought books like The Music of the Eagles Made Easy for guitar, and the songs of Dan Fogelberg Made Easy for guitar, and Cat Stevens Made Easy, in America Made Easy for guitar. And of course, I started learning all those Hank Williams songs that were my mom's favorites. And so that was part of that education process. But remember, I mentioned about that buddy of mine that would come from Western Maryland, and he took me to see Commander Cody, who had strong Western swing influences, as did Asleep at the Wheel.
Yeah.
And I wound up in those days, I think I was a senior in high school when I purchased Asleep at the Wheel recorded live at the Austin Opry. And that became one of my favorite records with all those Western swing songs. And of course, Western swing songs have, they have, the Hank Williams chords have, like, they're simple, Today I passed you on the street, and my heart fell at your feet. I can't help it if I'm still in love with you. And so they have those simple chords, but the Western swing songs, they have those little jazz chords. Deep within my heart lies a melody, a song of old San Antone. And so that was what I learned from Asleep at the Wheel. And so both of those were influences. And then you mix in the James Taylor chords, and that's when I started becoming a serious guitar player. If you can play a few James Taylor songs, then everybody thinks you're a real guitar player, because those are challenging. So all of those were influences.
Well, you're talking about this incredible collegiate education that you got, and you did end up leaving school to become a full-time musician. So what was the motivation behind that choice? Was burnout in education a role in that as well?
Well, that's a strong question, because I think there were a lot of factors that went into me leaving graduate school. I wound up graduating. I got my BA, as I mentioned earlier. It was graduate school that I left.
Right.
But when I went to the University of Arizona, my dream was to get into their MFA program for creative writing. And all of the people that were in that program were probably already in their, at minimum, mid-30s, some of them in 40s and 50s that were in that program. There were very few people just out of undergraduate school. So I wound up instead enrolling in a master's program in journalism. And my heart wasn't really into that.
I gotcha.
I would wind up staying up all night writing songs. I would go to the I had regular gigs at the coffee shops that were near the University of Arizona campus. A place called Gentle Ben's. I had a regular show there. I had an every Friday happy hour at a place called the Sawmill Cafe. And that place in particular probably was, I got the bug for doing the live music thing. In undergraduate school, I had my last year of undergrad school, which was my 5th year of undergraduate work. It was I had to have that 5th year because I only needed one class to graduate it, and I had to wait the whole year to get that class. And so I'm going to backtrack a little bit and explain that extra senior year.
Sure.
That extra senior year that I had a regular Tuesday show that I did. I had a regular Wednesday show at a place called Katy Station. I had a regular Thursday show at the Genuine Oyster Bar. I had a regular Friday happy hour at Cheatham Street Warehouse. I would play Friday night at another bar. What was that called? That one bar. Anyway, I had all these regular gigs, and I was playing almost every night of the week. And school came fairly easy to me, so I wasn't that worried about passing. I was, that was all part of my education. And I was also playing guitar at the Catholic Student Center for the Sunday masses. And the priest there was a guitar player who had several fine handmade guitars, and then he had a bunch of Takaminis that he had there at the Catholic Student Center, where the chapel was adjacent to the chapel. So all of that education went into turning me into a songwriter. And then so when I got to Arizona and I had the opportunity to do these gigs, frankly, I was doing that, and for you can't really fake graduate school. You can go through the motions and get your degree in undergrad school. And I remember the head of the journalism department bringing me in saying, I think your heart's more into the songwriting. And I said, yes, sir, I think you're right. And so that all of those influences, and then a fella from the Austin area, actually closer to my hometown, he said, I'd like to do a recording with you and see if we can get you some traction. And so all of those were calling on me, and that's why I wound up leaving graduate school.
That makes sense. You talked about going to school for English, going to school for speech. You have journalism, philosophy. You have all this stuff in your background. And then you mentioned that your education really helped you with your songwriting. Can you expound upon that? How did these different aspects of your education really, honestly, the English and speech would seem to be the most the most needed, I would think, in your songwriting. But expound upon that. How did they help you with your songwriting?
I had a passion for school, and like I said, it really came easy to me, and I had many master teachers along the way. I don't mean teachers with masters, but just teachers who were extraordinary teachers, beginning with 4th grade, when a lady named Mrs. Bryant would have all of us in the class. She'd give the opportunity to all of us, but I think I was one of 2 who took advantage of it almost every week. At the end of the last class of each week on a Friday, she would offer an open time period where we could share something original that we had written. And I always had something available. And I remember there was a kid named Tony Stevenson. He always had something available. That was 4th grade in Johnson City. Then I moved to Marble Falls, and there was a lady named Mrs. McCoy. And she thought it was a great idea that this group of 5th graders that she was overseeing would create a booklet of haiku. And haiku is, there's so many syllables in 3 lines, and so you get pretty good at manipulating words to create those the haiku.
And that's something Hank was good at too. You talked about earlier that syllabic nature of his lines and his phraseology.
And then in 6th grade, there was a lady named Mrs. Moore. She was married to the junior high principal, and Mrs. Moore had us create a booklet where we stapled it together and brought it home for our family to see and share with everybody. But she wanted us to do a booklet of limericks. And limericks, of course, they're the perfect training for being a songwriter. There once was a man from Nantucket. Da 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 da. Bucket. Rhyme it. Use bucket instead of the other rhyme that might come to mind. And so anyway, so and then there was a lady in eighth grade who insisted that we learn the origin of words, etymology. And on and on. All these teachers just presented themselves every year, and so when I got to college, I already had a passion for all of that.
Yeah, you were destined, weren't you? Like just all of these ingredients being put into your cauldron, so to speak, over time. How did you go from kind of all of these residencies around where you're schooling, all these different, steady, consistent gigs? How did you go from that to being kind of pointed out and ended up on Nashville Star? Like, what was the transition between those two eras of your life?
Well, those venues where I played, I was playing my own music, mixed in with a cover of Jambalaya by Hank Williams, or a cover of Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain by Willie Nelson, or a cover or a Freddie Fender cover like Before the Next Teardrop Falls, and even mixing in some of the songs of the 70s like Dust in the Wind by Kansas, which is a beautiful song lyrically. And of course, I've neglected to mention another one of my big influences. That was Paul Simon's writing in Simon and Garfunkel, and also Lennon and McCartney, because I learned a lot of their songs as well. I had, of course, I grew up. I was a little younger than some who grew up during when those songs came out on their original albums. But I wound up listening to their repertoire on what I called the Red Album and the Blue Album, which were compilations of the early years and compilation of the later years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have Revolver originally or any of those early albums, even though I went back and studied those later. But I learned all of those in the Red Album, which were the early years, and then I'd wind up learning those songs from the Blue Album, which was the later years.
Yeah. So how did you get noticed in for, like, being auditioning for Nashville Star from that?
So the fact that I was doing my own original music, that there were several people who heard me do a few songs that thought, well, he's got some decent songs. And there was a lady in Johnson City, Texas, which of course is not far from Marble Falls. I mentioned both two cities earlier. And she heard me playing at a small music and arts event that she was running. And she said, there's a group from Nashville and LA, because I think some of them were part of the LA community that were part of the USA network. And she told me that they were looking for singer-songwriters. They were looking for artists who could sing, but especially those who could write their own songs. And she said she thought I should enter. My wife saw it somewhere or heard it on the radio, and she said, you need to enter this. You need to get involved in that. And that was, of course, that was significant. And then there was another lady I had done a house concert for near Marble Falls out in the country at her ranch. And she sent me the clipping that she saw, I think, from the Austin American Statesman. So those three things, it's like, okay, maybe all these people want me to do it. Maybe I should. So I entered in Austin, and I don't know if you remember some of the early shows from the USA Network. and the first season of Nashville Star.
Mhm.
But the way they worded it was there was going to be these regional competitions, and there was only going to be one winner from each. And so I entered that the Austin regional competition, and I wound up coming in second. So by their own rules, I should not have been allowed to continue on to the next level. No, that was the local competition, and then there was a regional that came later. So I entered the Austin local competition, and so I thought, okay, I came in second. I gave it a good shot, and I thought that was it. But there was a lady there named Tracy Gershon. She was one of the representatives from Sony and Columbia Records. Columbia is a subsidiary of Sony, and she said, there may be a way for us to get you invited to the regional competition that will happen. And she said, so don't lose hope. She told me later that the group picked a younger artist who they thought Nashville would want, rather than the person. She was in the room as they were deliberating, and she said that they thought I won, but that Nashville probably would want this younger artist named well, I'll think of his name here in a minute. But he was a kid from Uvalde, Texas, and he was amazing. He really was amazing. But anyway, I came in second. So then she reached out to me and she said, we're going to invite you as an at-large participant to go to the regional, because the judges clearly thought you were the winner, but they gave us what they thought we wanted.
Yeah.
and so I got invited to the regional competition, which was located in Houston, and there the regional winner from Dallas was also present, and so her name was Miranda Lambert. So I wound up coming in second again to Miranda Lambert, and so the folks from the USA Network and Tracy Gershon from Sony and Charlie Robison, all of them said, man, Nashville really needs what you do. And Charlie stopped me and talked for me at length as I was trying to leave the parking lot at the Broken Spoke after the Austin local competition, and he said Nashville really needs what you do, and so even though I came in second, they said, we have an online entry where you submit a video, and because of that video, then you'll be judged, and it's possible that you could get selected for the national competition, even though I came in second there again, because only the winner was supposed to advance. And so I entered created a video, and I entered the online competition, and that's when I got selected as a video entry for the national competition. So there it is. And then I wound up coming in second at the national competitions. So it's crazy. Came in second at every spot.
So obviously this is when I kind of got on your radar, or you got on my radar, was through that competition. And for me, you were the winner of that show for me. Just as somebody who watched it every single week, just because you were so different, right, than everybody else on the show. And I think part of what made you different to me was, although they were looking for original artists, there was a lot of cover material on the show, and a lot of folks were just trying to essentially do a cover like the original. And you were doing the opposite of that. You were taking a cover and you were putting that John Arthur Martinez spin on the song. I found that interesting, and that's always been kind of a forte of yours since then as well. I want to hear you talk about the importance of that, taking a well-known song and putting your stamp on it and kind of making it your own.
Well, you definitely hit on a point that I told my wife. I said, they're forcing me to sing a song from the Sony catalog uh, for the compilation album that they're doing, even though they claim that this is about being a search
Original.
for original artists.
Right.
And whenever I confronted them with that, they said, "Well, there's some of you who write better songs than others, and it would be an unfair advantage." And I thought that was kind of
I mean,
ridiculous.
isn't
I thought
that the
that song,
point? They're looking for the
I
best
thought,
original artist.
exactly, exactly. So I thought that I said, but they had me, by in the contract said, I had to do whatever they told me to do, and so they said I had to select one. So I wound up selecting a song that I had been performing with our daughter, and I thought I'm going to do this song. She loves it. This is the version that she does, the version by Alison Krauss of "When You Say Nothing at All," and I of course love the version Keith Whitley did.
Hmm.
And then I took those two versions and then I added and I rewrote the second verse in Spanish, and the second chorus I sang in Spanish, and that definitely was something that set me apart. And it's something that I had already been doing before. I did that with Amarillo by Morning on one of my independent recordings, and I had already been doing things like that. And of course, Johnny Rodriguez before me and Freddie Fender before me were already doing things like that, and they were big influences. And so then there were times when they would not allow me to do an original song, uh, and so I thought, well, if like for instance, there was one time they wanted us to sing a song that celebrated America, and so I did "Good Morning America," how the song by Steve Goodman that Willie Nelson won the Grammy with, and I did it, my own finger picking acoustic guitar folksy way of doing it, and et cetera. With all the other songs, with Some Kind of Wonderful, I turned it into a honky tonk shuffle
Hmm.
whenever we had to do a rock and roll song, et cetera. But every moment though that that they gave me the choice, I did an original song, and so I wound up doing more original songs than anybody. I did more original songs than Miranda Lambert or Buddy Jewell, the other two finalists. Who and Because I thought, Miranda sings better than me, Buddy sings better than me. The only thing that sets me apart is my originality.
Hmm.
So that's why I kept doing original
And that's
stuff.
what made me notice you. You were the most original artist of that season, in my opinion, and the covers is what stood out for me on that. Right, it wasn't your original songs that made me think, "Wow, this guy's original. He's unique." It's the songs that I knew that you did in a different way that made me take notice, and that's just been a staple of your career ever since then too. Like I hear so many songs, usually very obscure kind of covers too, that you'll stick a smattering of in your catalog over the years that I just absolutely love. From you, you talked about kind of the bilingual nature of your songs as well. Did you find any pushback from that in the industry?
Well, yes, of course, there is. Um, as you know, being involved in the music industry, it there was a time period when it celebrated people like uh, Baldemar Huerta and his two big hits. Here's a fella who grew up in San Benito, Texas. He had a thick uh, accent when he spoke English, but he was an American born in Texas, and he was very country and he loved country. And his hits, Before the Next Teardrop Falls and Wasted Days and Wasted Nights, of course, um, he changed his name wisely for radio to Freddie Fender, and there was a time when that was acceptable. And when Johnny Rodriguez was singing his songs, some of them in Spanish and English, that was accepted. But as you know, country radio has moved further and further away from that openness, and it's become even more and more conservative uh, as it's moved into to today's time period. And so there were a couple who said, well, it sounds like regional music, and we're not going to play it,
Yeah.
because it's regional. And of course, they could have said that about Johnny Rodriguez, and he had what, 17 number one hits. They could have said it uh, about Freddie Fender's bilingual version of Before the Next Teardrop Falls. They could have said it about some of the sounds that wind up on top of radio, like Hank Williams' Jambalaya, or some of the other artists who had that Louisiana influence, or those artists who had the Appalachian influence. Those were regional, but that's all country music.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, yes, I did hear that, and
I think it's important, man, and we talk about this on the show so much, and I think I harp on it a lot because it's so important to creativity and the arts in general. It was important to you, John Arthur Martinez, to see somebody like Freddie Fender, to see somebody like Johnny Rodriguez that's out there and doing this and doing it successfully. And I imagine you as a young kid look up and you can see yourself there. That those people look like me, they sound like me, they talk like me. And if those people didn't exist, perhaps you don't follow those footsteps. And now you're there too, and you're doing the same thing, whether you want to know it or not or believe it or not. You're doing the same thing for younger people at your shows as well. When you're up there doing that and being bilingual and adding original twists to your songs in multiple languages, there are going to be kids that are watching you and seeing you up on that stage and picturing themselves in your footsteps. And that is so important to every single culture and person of every color and creed and orientation and whatever. And I can't say it enough on this show how much young people are looking up to that. And I just wanted to thank you for kind of continuing that on from the Freddies and the Johnnies and the people like Flaco Jimenez and so many others. That Rick Trevino is a big one as well. That
Yes.
Raul Malo. There's so many. But I just wanted to thank you for that because that's really important to the arts, I think.
Well, you mentioned artists that, of course, I've had a connection to. Raul Malo sang the lead on one of my songs on that Grammy-winning album with Flaco Jimenez, and he's a big influence. And the person who produced him, Don Cook, also produced that single of mine, When You Say Nothing at All. I did so many shows with Rick Trevino when he was at the top of his game. They would have me opening for Rick across the state, and I still call him a friend. And more recently, when an artist named Alex Harvey decided to leave Nashville, he moved to Llano, Texas, which is about, as a crow flies, probably about 15 miles from here. As on the going through the winding hill country roads, it was probably about 25 miles from here. But I wrote several songs with him, including that song "Seguro Que Hell Yes," that wound up on Flaco's album with on Arista Records with Raul Malo and with Leroy Parnell and Radney Foster, all collaborating on that album. And on my new album, I have another song that I found on a cassette, that a song that I had written with Alex Harvey and Mike Blakely. He's somebody you'll see in the liner notes on every album of mine. He and I have been writing songs for a long time together. And so Alex and I and Mike wrote this song called It Doesn't Matter, No Le Hace. And I think it's going to be one of my fans' favorites when I get done with it. It's on the cassette that now you can buy a cassette player that you can hook into your computer.
Yeah.
And you can, and so I have a little cassette and I've uploaded it into it, and I realized that the demo that Alex Harvey did, he may have gotten some of the Spanish words wrong, and so I fixed those, and I made the chorus rhyme when it didn't rhyme, and different things. So I've just finished it, and it's going to be on my next album.
Exciting. I wanted to point that out to you. There are Hispanic-Americans out there that are going to follow this art path because of you, and just awesome stuff, man. Thank you for doing it.
Chris, we should interject there for those who don't know Alex Harvey. He wrote probably 20 songs that were recorded by uh, so many greats. He wrote Reuben James, Delta Dawn. Kenny Rogers did like a dozen of his. There were like half of one of his albums were songs by Alex Harvey.
Yeah, he also
And
wrote Behind Closed Doors, which is a big hit for Charlie Rich.
oh, I didn't realize he wrote that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, one of my
But
favorite Alex Harvey songs. Yeah, just a huge amount of songs, and we lost him during the pandemic, if I recall
yes,
correctly.
yes.
So yeah, Alex Harvey was a hell of a songwriter, to say the very least. Multiple, probably over a dozen number ones at least. I think he wrote Reuben James too.
He did write Reuben James. You walk the shallow fields of my mind. What a
Yes.
line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. Man, great stuff. Man, I hadn't heard that name in a minute, so thank you for the memories on that. Man, we got John Arthur Martinez here. We're going to talk about the second song here, which is just such a cool song. Tell us about the Armadillo Song, John.
The Armadillo Song was born in an ice storm outside of Nashville when Mike Blakely and I were driving back. I think we were driving back from having gone to Townes Van Zant's funeral in Nashville. We didn't go to Nashville intending to go to his funeral. It's just that Townes died as we were driving to Nashville, and on the night that we arrived, we learned of his passing, and we had a recording session set up with another great songwriter that you know, Paul Overstreet. He was going to do with another friend of ours
We're in
named
talks
Mike
with Paul
Seiler,
right
who's-
now to be on the show, so that's exciting that you're bringing him up. Very cool.
Well, Paul was friends with one of our local friends here from Marble Falls who was living in Nashville, a gentleman named Mike Seiler, who still performs on Lower Broadway on a regular basis. But we were going to do something at Paul Overstreet's studio, and then I found out that Towns's memorial service was going to be at the same time. And I told my buddies, I said, you guys go on to Paul's studio and I'm going to go to this memorial service. Well, they all decided they needed to go to the memorial service too after they found out. And it was a who's who, that memorial service for Townes Van Zandt. But I bring this up because this was all right like the first week of January, and this huge ice storm had hit that whole area. And so I needed to get back because at that time I was trying to pay some bills. And so I was coaching tennis and working at the English department at Marble Falls High School. So I said, man, we got to get back. And so we started braving the icy roads to get me back to Marble Falls from Nashville. And what normally was about a 15 or 16 hour drive turned it into about a 22, 23 hour drive, maybe almost a 24 hour drive. I mean, we just took turns and kept going because Mike knew I had to get back to school, back to work. And when you have all this time on your hand and you're driving slowly and you're just being cautious. So whenever I sat in the passenger seat, I'd had this notepad out, and Mike and I started doing this like a lesson in alliteration. Alliteration, of course, for those of you who remember your English classes, is the repetition of the beginning consonant sounds. Baby, buggy, bumper, she sells seashells by the seashore. And so we started with this first line. There's a big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road, with that little rhythm. There's an old brown bottle in a puddle near the cattle guard. It's easier to say faster. There's a June bug beetle in the bottom of the bottle near the big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road that I am traveling on. And so then I had to go on and on with trying to remember all of that. And I will tell you that my wife has had this idea that we needed to turn it into a children's song.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
a children's book, in addition to a children's song.
That'd be cool.
And so in the original version, I think I wind up killing the armadillo in the original version. and final verse, it was like there's a dead armadillo, and my daughters and my wife didn't like that. No, you got to let the
Can't kill the
armadillo live.
armadillo, man.
It's got to be a resilient armadillo. So anyway, that's how it evolved, and then for the children's book, I'm going to have to do a video, just an iPhone video, and send it to you, because I extended another verse with a character in it that resembles my grandfather.
Oh, that's
There's-
awesome.
Yeah, there's a dark-headed farmer on a John Deere tractor in a field of corn with a red bandana in a straw sombrero in a shirt that's worn. He's changing gears in the old John Deere so he can steer clear of the longhorn steer and the dillo and the trucker on the trail I'm traveling on. So I've got to get you that. So
Please,
and
yeah,
I
that's
promise
awesome.
you, I'll do it. So that's how it evolved.
That's cool stuff, man. I think it's your most watched video on YouTube as well as for the Armadillo Song.
It has gotten a lot of plays for me. It's not the number of streams that you might see on a Taylor Swift album, but
Right.
but nonetheless, it's a lot for an indie guy like me.
Man, it's one of those songs where if you're going to keep it in the set list, you're not going to be able to drink very much, though, huh? Because
Good point.
yeah, I'd be like,
Absolutely
man,
good
I'd be
point.
fumbling all through those alliterations, man. I'll keep it real. Guys, it's the Armadillo Song. Y'all check it out.
Well, there's a dark-headed farmer on a John Deere tractor in a field of corn with a straw sombrero and a red bandana and a shirt that's worn. He's changing gears in the old John Deere so he can steer clear of the longhorn steer, the dillo and the trucker on the trail I'm traveling on. He swerved to the right, it's a dillo in the middle. He swerved to the left, it's a trucker and the steer. Next thing you know, he's plowing toward me. I run from the tractor and what do I see? A big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road. An old brown bottle in a puddle in the cattle garden. A June bug beetle in the bottom of the bottle, and a big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road I'm traveling on. There's a big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road. An old brown bottle in the puddle of the cattle garden. And there's a June bug beetle in the bottom of the bottle of the big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road that I am traveling on. There's a red-headed rider with the radio rearing and the windows down. He's rocking and reading the rhythm of the country sounds. He's got his 18-wheeler with his pedal to the metal, and he's headed for the dillo in the bottle in the middle of a little old country road I'm traveling on. Well, he swerved to the right, it's dillo in the middle. He swerved to the left, it's the puddle in the garden. Next thing you know, he's coming toward me. Drive to the bar ditch, what do I see? Big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road. An old brown bottle in the puddle of the cattle garden. And there's a June bug beetle in the bottom of the bottle of the big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road that I'm traveling on. Now that I've taught you the words, everybody sing along. Here we go. Big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road. An old brown bottle in the puddle of the cattle garden. And a June bug beetle bottom of the bottle of the big armadillo in the middle of a little old country road I am traveling on.
All right, so we're back with John today, and speaking of evolution, the evolution of our third part of the show, which is coming up, has gone from something that we used to call having fun, and then I switched it to off the rails. But today, John is going to be the first person to do By the Numbers. So this is called By the Numbers with John Arthur Martinez, and this is going to be cool, I hope. So we're going to do 8 segments here, and 7 of them are by the numbers. So here we go. The first one is 7 different subjects in rapid fire fashion. So I'm going to give you a question, and you just answer as quickly as you can. Okay?
All right. Well,
All right, here
I
we
should
go.
have taken I should have consumed a shot of espresso for this. but we'll see where
No
it goes.
espresso.
Okay,
It's
go.
fine. All right. Here's 7 rapid fire questions. Number 1, what is your current song obsession?
I love Red Clay Strays. I love Chris Stapleton, Alison Krauss.
No, song.
I'm with her.
Specific song.
I'm with her.
What's your
Oh,
specific song obsession right now?
well, there's a song called My Own. Well, I just wrote one uh, called This Old Barn, and it's become my obsession because uh, there's a fellow who showed up at one of my songwriters meetup, and he shows up at almost all my events, and he's a great banjo player, mandolin player, guitar player. And I asked him to get up and share one of his songs, and he says, I've never written a song. And so I said, we're going to change that, and we wrote This Old Barn.
Very nice. All right, what is something fans may not know about you?
That I'm the disco dance champion of St. Mary's Catholic Church, and also the disco dance champion at Marble Falls High School my senior year.
All right, what is something specific that is not fun about the music business?
Something specific that's not fun, the accounting that you have to do every year, and trying to figure out, what you can legitimately write off. The money part is the definitely the toughest.
Name a place and time you would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for, or a room in history.
Wow. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when Willie Nelson was recording The Red-Headed Stranger on an old machine with only a few $1,000s to spend.
Very cool. What is your personal best accomplishment?
Wow. I think it is touching thousands of people with my songs, people that I have no idea how they knew my music, like the gentleman who approached me in Switzerland near the Austrian border, who wanted to hear a song called "When You Whisper in My Ear." I thought he was coming up to request. He said, "Do you accept requests?" And I thought he was coming up and wanting to hear Margaritaville or Sweet Home Alabama, and he wanted to hear an obscure song of mine, and because I had touched his heart, he hardly spoke English. Again, the couple in Germany, in Saxony, that region in East Germany, that came up to me and wanted to buy 7 of my CDs, and I tried to sell them my 15 CD compilation on a USB, and I couldn't understand why they only wanted 7, because the USB was much cheaper. They came back the next night and they shared with me, "You don't understand, we already have these other albums." And they wrote it down and said,
Let's go. They wanted the ones they didn't have, John.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, John,
So
what's on your bucket list?
my bucket list is to go to the English-speaking countries in Europe who would understand my music. I've never performed in Europe at English-speaking nations like Scotland or Ireland or England. I've only performed at these countries that speak German and French and Italian. Although
Amazing
I
stuff.
did get to go to Barcelona.
Very cool.
That's on a bucket list.
All right, last one of
Australia,
rapid
too.
fire. What is the biggest lesson you've learned directly from music?
To be humble.
I love it. All right, next segment is called What the Heck. We just did 7. Now it's 6 What the Heck questions. These are randomly selected before the show. Here we go. What the Heck with John Arthur Martinez. If you wrote a book, what would it be about?
All of those moments in my life, like when I showed up at Willie's Farm Aid before I was a serious musician with all of my college buddies and was told we were not allowed in, and then we were leaning against the fence trying to figure out what our next move was. Should we just listen from the parking lot? And the lady across the fence said, "Are you gentlemen the volunteers for the first aid tent?"
Nice.
And we said yes. There were all these crazy experiences like that have happened in my life. And I want to write a book about those things.
All right, number 2. Do you think SpongeBob feels every single hole on his body?
Absolutely.
I think so, too. All right, number 3. If you were born the opposite gender, how do you think things would have turned out different?
Wow. I would have been that girl who was never asked to dance at the high school sock hop who 20 years later people would say, "Wow, who is that?"
I love it. Number 4, what do you think cats dream about?
Oh, they dream about the next nap.
Number 5, how long do you wait after finishing your food before going back for seconds?
Oh, you can't wait too long in a Mexican family.
No, you cannot. That's true. All right, number 6, if a penguin walked in your room right now wearing a sombrero, why is he there and what is he doing?
He's probably trying to get me to write a bilingual song about uh, the Arctic areas.
I think you should get on that. It'd be perfect for wintertime, the 3 days of wintertime here in Texas. All right, next one is 5, top 5. So what are John Arthur Martinez's top 5 favorite songs that you have written? Your top 5.
Ask me tomorrow, it's going to be different. But today I'm going to say Lone Starry Night. I'm going to say The Phone Call. I'm going to say Homemade of Stone. I'm going to say Here's to Boys from an earlier album called Stand Your Ground. I'm going to say The River of Love because it took me to Europe.
All right, that's
Oh,
5.
yeah.
No more. That's 5. Awesome stuff. You did it, man. That's a hard question.
Yeah.
All right, next one, and by the numbers, is Mount Rushmore. Who are the top 4 most influential artists in your life?
My Mount Rushmore is Willie Nelson, James Taylor, Hank Williams, Bob Wills.
Perfect. Next one is for the number 3, and it's called Impactful. Can you name 3 people that have impacted your life in some way? And then tell us the biggest thing you learned from each of those people.
Kent Finley, the owner of Cheatham Street
Hell yes.
Warehouse. He hosted a songwriters open mic in the old days around the wood burning stove. There were so many legendary artists who were part of that songwriter circle in its earliest days and later years as well, including Todd Snyder, Bruce Robinson, Charlie Robinson, Terry Hendricks.
Dozens and dozens and dozens
on
and
and
dozens.
on,
You just keep
on
going.
and on.
Yeah.
And plus, he and I co-wrote probably 20 songs together.
All right, that's 1. 2 more.
The next one would probably be Floyd Tillman from my hometown of Marble Falls, Texas.
Ooh, this is a name I
Not-
haven't heard in a minute.
Not because I got to spend hours and hours and hours with him, but because I realized here in my own hometown was a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame,
Mm-hmm.
a member of the Nashville Songwriters Association International Hall of Fame. And when I went to the Smithsonian, there he was in the Smithsonian, recognized for his contributions to American culture and American music. And I did a concert series with him. And in my songwriters meetup, our goal is to honor him that I do every third Sunday of the month. And we put up a statue in Marble Falls where Robert Orman from Nashville, Tennessee, helped us with the inscription, and Asleep at the Wheel's founding member Ray Benson helped us with the fundraising, and so Floyd Tillman really had, even though I didn't spend as much time as I did with Kent Finley, he's just been such an influence. He's been there in my, and he should be remembered.
All right, 1 more that impacted you.
My dad's older brother. His name was Eliud Martinez, and he was the one that I told you was the professor of comparative literature and also a book author. And he also ran the, I know this is unusual, Chicano Studies department at University of California, Riverside. And he would always leave me things to encourage my creativity from a very young age. Eliud Martinez.
I love that, man. All right, by the numbers, number 2 is called gratitude, and the definition of gratitude is the quality of being thankful or the readiness to show appreciation for and to return kindness to. So, what are the 2 things that you are most grateful for, John?
Definitely my wife. There are a lot of musicians who have shared that their wives were not as encouraging as they wish they would have been, and many of them are now divorced for the second time or the third time. And my wife, she's never given me grief when I said, "Oh, I found this amazing Takamine guitar at the pawn shop,"
Yep.
and I said, "This one, I said this is, it's one's handmade in Japan, which and oh well." Well, how much is it? We need to get that then. That would always be her response rather than, "Oh no, we not another
Not
guitar."
another guitar, yeah.
Yeah. And she's the one who encouraged me to go to get on Nashville Star. In fact, she's always been the most encouraging about, if she had said, "Hey, it's going to be tough while you're away on Nashville Star, and I'm trying to pay all the bills here, and you're going to leave your school teaching position at Marble Falls, and you're teaching with the local private school, and how are we going to make ends meet?" It wasn't that. It was like, "Well, you need to do this. We need to figure out a way." And so she's always been there, always had my back.
All right, and the second thing you're most grateful for?
My mom, another wonderful woman. My mom for teaching me how to write well before most people my age were learning how to write. My stepfather worked at the local grocery store, the HEB. He was the produce manager, and she would bring home these brown paper sacks that she'd cut open and use the pencils or the pens that he had from HEB, and she started with the alphabet and numbers, and well before I was even in kindergarten. Nowadays they have these Fisher Price toys that do that when but back in those days, my mom would do it on the kitchen floor. She would
Awesome
also
stuff.
be the one who would edit my research papers. She's an intelligent woman, and she's still in banking. A few years back, she celebrated 50 years at banking in Texas.
Awesome stuff, John. All right, by the numbers for the number 1, who is one artist you wish the entire world knew about?
One artist I wish the entire world knew
Other than yourself.
about. um, with the internet and with YouTube and streaming and sharing all that, there's a lot of artists that people know about, and more people are finding out about them. But I think I'm with her ought to be huge.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think. Yes, they did get some recognition from the
They
Academy
just
of
won a
Recording
Grammy,
Arts.
didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the whole world needs to know about them.
Yeah, I agree.
Uh,
Oh my gosh, great songwriters too. Oh man.
yeah.
Good answer. I love that. All right, last segment could be the hardest one for an artist to answer, though. The segment is called "Who Do You Think You Are?" So, who is John Arthur Martinez?
I'm gonna give the response that Flack gave during MASH. It's like he said, "I keep myself in a constant state of utter confusion. That way, no one can get the truth out of me because even I don't know the truth." And the truth is, I'm not sure I totally know who I am. I think because I'm a Gemini, I am many things at different times. I mean, at times I'm a poet, at times I'm a songwriter, at times I'm an athlete, at times I'm a philosopher, at times I'm a grandfather, at times I'm a husband. Um, I I am so many things at different times, and But I will tell you this, that whichever those things I am, I always try to do it as to the best of my ability.
John, I appreciate you so much for being here, man. What a great conversation this has been. And, man, it's just a long time coming, and I'm a huge fan of yours. Let me tell folks where people can follow along with you. It's johnarthurmartinez.net. We're going to put that in the description and the show notes down below. That way you guys can just go down there, click it, and go check it out. There's all kinds of stuff over here at that website, from merchandise to touring, awesome bio. Just check it out. There's all kinds of cool stuff on here. If you are wanting to follow John on different social medias, his Facebook is at John Arthur Martinez Music. The YouTube is at Martinez John Arthur. X is at Jam Records, and Instagram is at Jamster Numero Uno. So whichever your favorite platforms are, go follow along with John. And I imagine the best way to support you is probably go see you at a show, right, John?
Yes, definitely go see me at a show. And if you want to buy the USB that has my entire collection of songs, that's what I encourage people to do, because nowadays people don't have CDs.
Right.
And so please, that's the way you can do it. But we
And I
will
think
see
that's
you.
on the website too. You guys can get that right from the
Yes.
website as well. So
Yes.
order that right there. John, thanks again for doing this, man. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Boston Chris.
Hey, this is Jubilee Young, and thank you for tuning in to the Boston Chris Show.